Well, hi there. What would you do if you had this amazing 120-gallon PVC enclosure from Dubia.com and $1,000 to find anything on Morph Market to put in it? That's the question I'm going to have to answer today, because that's exactly the situation that I find myself in today. Life is hard. So I want to tell you all about this enclosure because it is an updated version of what are already some of my favorite enclosures that you can get. But before I even get into this thing, I'm going to need to figure out what I'm going to put in it. So let's hop over to the studio and take a look at the options. Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Clint LOVES. And with my wonderful wife, Lehi, we run and operate Clint's Reptile Room in Springville, Utah, which is probably the most hands-on reptile-focused learning facility anywhere on Earth. So when I'm looking for an animal, I want it to be something that not only looks neat, but provides a unique and special interactive experience. I should also mention, and I'll be talking more about this in the near future, but we're working hard this year preparing for the biggest expansion to the reptile room ever. It's a big deal. And it means that we will have room, at least in the near future, for some large animals. I guess what I'm saying is that it won't be a problem if the animal outgrows this giant enclosure eventually. And let's face it, this enclosure is big enough for pretty much any baby reptile on the planet, at least unless it needs a huge amount of water. Of course, I could always use it as a mansion for smaller reptiles. I guess what I'm saying is that I'm pretty much only limited by what I truly want the most, and to a very small degree by my budget, which really is only keeping me from getting another tree monitor or an indigo snake. But most of my dreams are well within this budget. So let me run through some of the things I'm considering and a quick list of their pros and cons. So let's start with snakes. I love giant colubrids. My favorite snake is a false water cobra, but there are other giant colubrids that I don't already own. I said my budget doesn't cover an eastern indigo, but it would cover an even larger relative of theirs, a yellowtail crebo, as well as the slightly smaller but less crebo poop producing king rat snake, which I've become interested in recent years. So those are the snakes, but I have a lot of other lizards on my list. I've been obsessed with giant plated lizards since returning from Africa, and even somewhat before finding them in the wild. Desert iguanas also have been on my radar in a big way. I've loved them pretty much all my life, but I only recently discovered that they are the closest relatives of the Fijian iguanas, which might be the best pet lizards on the planet, if you can get one. Which has me really wanting to know just how good desert iguanas are. Plus, they cohabitate well with chuckwallas, and I have a chuckwalla, but I'm not supposed to be doing pros and cons just yet. I just really am excited about desert iguanas. Slightly larger, but still an iguana, is the legendary banana pectinata iguana, which is probably the best pet iguana that you can get in the United States. So those are the reasonably sized lizards. But what about the giants? Because we're going to have space for a few more large reptiles in the next few years. As many of you know, our beloved tegu Gus Gus recently passed away. I'm very tempted on a red or black and white tegu that we could raise from a baby here at the room. I'm actually looking for a well-socialized adult to take in, but I would also like to raise one from a baby. I've never had that opportunity before, as we took in Gus Gus when he was a little bit older, which means that I didn't get to work with him while he was still young enough that a bite wouldn't be a big deal. So we couldn't totally trust him not to bite, and he did bite a few people, though never a guest at the reptile room. Also on my list are Cyclura iguanas, especially rhino iguanas, as well as white throat monitors. I've been obsessed with them since my trip to Africa. They're legendary. Of course, if you want a giant African rock monitor, why not go for the biggest one of all, the black throat monitor? So that's my list. Let's talk briefly about the pros and cons of each and see which ones we can find right now on Morph Market. And then let's go ahead and build this amazing enclosure. Okay, so just to reiterate, our 10 options are a yellow-tailed crebo, a king rat snake, a giant plated lizard, a desert iguana, a banana pectinata iguana, a red tegu, an Argentine black and white tegu, a rhinoceros iguana, a white throat monitor, or a black throat monitor. So let's hop on Morph Market and see what we can find. If you aren't familiar with Morph Market, this is basically Amazon.com for reptiles. I know of no place where you'll be able to find as wide a diversity of reptiles from as many different breeders all in one place. If you're like me, you always read reviews of products before you buy. Well, they have reviews of the breeders right there for you to see, so you can buy with confidence that this person's legit. Morph Market is one of the sponsors of this video, but they didn't tell me to tell you any of this. It's just an incredible resource. If you're looking for a reptile, there is a very good chance that you'll be able to find it here. Or you might not be able to find it anywhere. So, can I find a yellow-tailed crebo? Yeah. As well as, looks like, all sorts of other crebos. And many of them are within my budget, even after shipping and supplies for the enclosure. So, the pros. This is a giant, intelligent, gloriously beautiful colubrid. Basically my recipe for the best snake ever. And this might be the most massive colubrid on Earth. Interacting with a snake like this is an event unlike almost anything else you will ever handle. They're more like a king cobra than they are like a corn snake. But of course without the extreme risk of death when interacting with them. Always a plus. The cons are really just that they poop like crebos. We have a whole song about that in this video if you want more information about that. And they're snake eaters. So that's a bit of a risk in a room full of snakes and people that just got done handling snakes. All right. So next, can we find a king rat snake? Never seen a king rat snake in person. So how hard can it be to find? There you go. Okay. Considering that I've never seen a king rat snake in person, this is a huge selection. And they're a bit cheaper than crebos from the look of things. This is another cool big colubrid and one very different from anything else I have or have ever interacted with. But they also eat snakes, and it sounds like they take a little bit more work to socialize than, say, the crebos. And while they don't poop like crebos, they do musk, so that's a consideration. And they aren't as big as a crebo, which is often a pro, but maybe not for me in this case. All right, how about a giant plated lizard? Okay, so I'm not finding any available right now, which probably just reflects that no shipments of imports have arrived recently. But the truth is, I'm not interested in a wild-caught import, which is pretty much all that you see. But I have seen them captive bred, or at least captive hatched in the past. Let me see. Okay, so here's one. Now, sometimes somebody claiming to have something like this one says it's captive hatched, not captive bred. There's a difference there. But that could be a red flag because a lot of people will claim that baby imports are captive bred, which is why it's such a good thing that they have seller reviews here on Morph Market. I doubt that a seller who's routinely lying about the animals they're producing or claiming to produce is going to have a 4.9 stars out of 5 on over 100 reviews. So you can buy with a lot more confidence because you can see, at least in all their other interactions, people seem satisfied with what they're doing and happy with what they're receiving, which wouldn't be the case if you're getting some sickly import that's claimed to be captive bred, or in this case, captive hatched. But as for today, looks like these are going to be off my list, though I did recently come across a breeder who just produced a clutch of these. And so hopefully the world changes for the captive breeding of giant plated lizards here pretty soon. All right, what about desert iguanas? Okay, so the only one I'm seeing available right now is in the UK. But we are filming this in February, phylogeny February, and I know that there are some really good breeders in the United States, but they're likely still waiting for new hatchlings to be born this year. But here are a few from the not so distant past. So they're great. They will be available. I just recently met a great breeder in Colorado, but these will probably need to wait as well. However, I know we're going to be able to find the next one on our list, the banana pectinata. And yeah, there are several options. These are spectacular lizards that get to a really great size They're not too big nor too small. They have great dispositions and they're beautiful. They actually look virtually nothing like what you're seeing here in these pictures though, as adults. As babies, they all look kind of like this, which is actually the way that all other spiny-tailed iguanas look. They're just green. And the thing is, most spiny-tailed iguanas are nowhere near as good of pets. In fact, most of them get quite large and grumpy. I know people that have been sold other species of spiny-tailed iguanas as banana pectinatas, only to discover later, like once they matured, that they'd been taken. So again, it's very good to have seller reviews. So those are the little lizards. Well, at least the not gigantic lizards, because I'm also considering some truly gigantic lizards. Let's start with the tegus and get more insane as we go. Tegus are probably the most reasonable big lizards that there are. I love them. And right now, I don't have one in my life. In fact, Leonard, our Asian water monitor, is our only really large lizard, other than the snakes. And I feel bad taking him to educational presentations during the cooler months. Tegus are much better for that. And even before Gus passed away, I was wanting to get a second male tegu, which is why I was thinking about a red. Blue tegus, which also have good dispositions, and I think they're gloriously beautiful, but they're just a bit smaller than black and white or red tegus, and I'm looking for a big lizard. And most of the other species don't have the same delightful disposition as black and white or red tegus. For most of our animals that regularly go to schools and other events, we generally have two, so no one animal has to go too often. But I prefer two animals that fill the same basic role in our presentations, but that aren't exactly the same thing, which is why I was considering a red tegu as a second tegu. That said, I very much prefer the appearance of black and white tegus. Plus, they've got a great story because they're partially endothermic. Both are great lizards that grow quickly. They will be impressively large lizards within a year. Really, the only downside is that I'm likely to find a larger, well-socialized tegu that needs a home in the near future. I almost took one in this last week. So maybe I want to focus my efforts on a large lizard that's a bit harder to find. But can I find a tegu on Morph Market? Yeah, there's tons of them. And since I'm more interested in a wild type than a morph, both species are easily inside my budget. By the way, you're looking at red tegus right now, and if red tegu adults looked like red tegu babies, they would be my favorites. But they don't. They look like meatballs, or worse. So those are the most reasonable giant lizards on my list. But not the only giant lizards on my list. So let's just keep climbing the unreasonable ladder. Next are Cyclura iguanas, mostly rhino iguanas. And there are tons of them here on Morph Market, mostly well within our budget. These guys are amazing. And one raised in Clint's reptile room is likely to be quite well behaved, which is good because they can easily bite your hand off. If friendly though, this is one of the coolest lizards on Earth, if not, yikes. But the big downside for me, at least historically, has been that they grow very slowly. They live a long time, I like that, but they take forever to get big. So I never consider them when I'm looking for a big lizard, as I can't vouch for how adults were raised, and babies are far from being large lizards. That said, I'm interested in some iguanas that never get large, and these will be that size very soon. So maybe I just need to enjoy them at all stages. And that brings me to the final two animals on my list, the most insane of all, white-throat and black-throated monitors. Both are crazy for similar reasons. They get to be 6 to 7 feet long, with black-throats being a few inches longer than white-throats on average. But let's start by looking for them on Morph Market. I'll start with the slightly smaller of the two, the white-throat monitor. And yeah, there are several white-throat monitors within my budget. These are some of the monitors with the best dispositions of all monitors. They're like giant savanna monitors that make better pets because they eat more vertebrates than do savanna monitors in the wild, and thus it's more reasonable to feed them an appropriate diet. That said, their larger cousins are even easier to feed properly. And yep, we've got some great options for them as well on Morph Market. But these are truly enormous lizards. Those are our options. And don't worry, we'll unbox our choice at the end of this video. But right now we gotta build that enclosure. So this is the newest version of the 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot enclosure from Dubia.com. And I'll be honest, I have 2 of one of the older versions of this enclosure, and I thought they were like perfect. They're unbelievably great. However, Dubia have made some significant changes to this new one that I wouldn't have called for, but they actually made it way better. And like, it was already the best one I know to exist, and they're just like, how do we make this considerably better? So I'll tell you some of the things that stood out to me as we built this thing. One of them is the ease of assembly. Let me show you some things. Okay, so in the past, when you had to build one of their enclosures, you needed this. And honestly, they went together much more easily than other similar enclosures, and they included this tool. So I was always thrilled with that. Like, this was great. However, this time, they still include the only tool you're going to need, and it's this one. So assembly is suddenly way easier, and I think less likely to fall apart later on. I haven't had that problem with the Dubia enclosures, but I have had it with other similar enclosures where they start to separate when substrate and things get big. Not going to happen now. On top of that, they sealed up the bottom and made it all one piece, which makes assembly easier, and it makes it so nothing's going to leak out from the very bottom. You're still not going to be able to put water in it like it was an aquarium, but if you have plants and stuff, it's not just going to leak everywhere, which these types of enclosures usually do. Spectacular. They've changed the screen mesh. The screen top, once again, is all one piece now, so assembly of the whole thing is super easy. It was easy before, it's way easier now. And I've always loved how the mesh is on the top of this enclosure, because you can put all your lights up there, but it is tough and durable. You're not going to poke holes in it. Well, they've made the mesh just a little bit less fine, and the reason for that is so that you can put zip ties through it and zip tie things directly to the roof of the enclosure, which is brilliant. So, and then the last thing that I've noticed, they had the highest quality plexiglass doors of any. I mean, it's the nicest plexiglass I've ever seen, and it hasn't been scratched nearly as much as other plexi. It's much more durable, and it's more clear. It looks better. It has a nice feel to it. The only better thing for them to include is glass, and they've switched to glass, and they've brilliantly packaged it by sandwiching it between the PVC panels, which are now thicker than ever, and so they're really strong and durable. They've somehow taken basically the perfect enclosure and made it way better. And yet they're still very reasonably priced. I just cannot believe these things. They're incredibly cool. Even though Dubia is one of the sponsors of this video, they've never given us any reason for me to tell people that you should buy these enclosures. It's not like we have a code or anything that they track. I have sold so many people on the previous Dubia enclosures that we have just because they're so darn great. They're spectacular. And again, this one's way better. How are you going to beat that, especially at that price? It's ridiculous. So now that the full enclosure is built, I guess it's time to get it decorated. Now, as I'm doing this background and everything, there will probably be some clues about what I got. So I would love it if you would throw down your guesses about which of our 10 options you think I went with down in the comments. See if you're right at the end of the video. Okay, so before I get started, I have a lot of ideas for this enclosure. In fact, I've had a lot of ideas depending on which thing I decide to put in this enclosure. And so I'm going to show you a few of the products that I've got to work with. We'll have links to all of these down in the description in case you're wanting something like this. So I've got some things like some Mopani wood. I've actually got a couple of very different looking pieces of Mopani wood. I've got a nice little cork round here. I've got Eco Earth. We're going to need a lot of this almost no matter what I do. And some forest moss. Some great stuff, expanding foam, and something that if you have watched some of our past enclosure builds, will probably be very familiar with, some Gorilla Glue. So we've got some old friends. I've also got a lot of lace rock, and I've got a few unconventional things. Well, I got sand. We're going to need sand no matter what. I've got some tile mortar. I've been playing around a lot with tile mortar lately. I'm not sure if I'm going to end up using it in this project or not. We'll just have to put everything inside, see how it looks, and see if I'm going to be using it or if I'm going to save that for the future. So let's get these doors off, get this enclosure on its back, and start taking a look around. So, got the enclosure on its back, and I can tell you, one of the things I love about these reptile habitats is that they've got a nice deep area for substrate. And we're actually going to be using that. That's going to be pretty full. So what I need to build is a backdrop that's higher than about this level in the back. And what I have in mind to use as my staple of the back is the lace rock to build a system of shelves. So we're going to experiment with that.
All right. Now we're going to need some substrate to put on the back.
And for that, I'm going to mix my favorite mix, which is mostly Eco Earth, but also just a little bit of sand and a little bit of the forest moss. I've been hydrating this block for a little bit now. I got a little bit here that's not fully hydrated, but as we mix it in, we got really wet stuff at the bottom, kind of dry stuff here at the top. So what we're going to do now, we're going to be using Gorilla Glue. If you aren't familiar with this technique, we've got several videos where we show it in greater detail. But I'm going to put a little water on the back because you need that to activate Gorilla Glue. Then we'll put the Gorilla Glue on. We'll put all of our backdrop pieces and then the substrate. And then we'll need to spend the next little while packing it down because it's going to inflate, and we'll push it down and it'll inflate. And we'll push it back down until we've got a pretty awesome backdrop that, well, you'll just have to see what it looks like. Okay, let's tip this up, pull some of the substrate off, and see what we've got under there. Okay. Yes. Okay, so we've given the backdrop a little bit of time to dry out so we can pull all the extra dirt off of it. But before I do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and put the basking and UVB lights on this enclosure, mostly just so we can see inside a little bit better. I'll start with this monstrous deep dome. It had to be big enough to accommodate a 125 watt light bulb, which is a little bit of a clue. This thing's going to need some heat. That's a big boy light bulb. The way that works. Well, we'll see how it's working. In addition to that heat lamp, we've also got this great big UVB LED fixture that we're going to put up on top as well. All right, now we've got some light. So now I'm just going to pull down some more of this substrate now that it's dry and we can see what we're doing. Put a happy tree over here. This is a really fun stage because this is where you really get to see what you've got for the first time. If you start at the top and work your way down, you don't have to do the bottom over and over and over again. I cannot believe how perfectly the lace rock blends in to what we made with our substrate. It's really quite seamless. It just gives incredible texture and a lot of room to climb. This is so cool. Oh, it looks awesome. It looks so cool. It's perfect. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever used lace rock in one of these Gorilla Glue backdrops, and I could not be happier with how this is turning out. It looks amazing. Well, I declare that officially legendary. Let's get some more substrate in there. This is the same basic mix that we used in the backdrop, except I didn't include any of the moss this time. It's just sand and eco-earth. And it looks like we're going to need a lot more than that, but the good news is I've got more soaking in the back. Let's go make a little more. Okay. I think one more ought to do it. All right, so that's the backdrop and the substrate. Now what we're going to do, I've got a lot of other elements, pieces of lace rock, pieces of wood, water bowl, things of that nature. I'm just going to start putting these in here and playing around and seeing what I like, and then I think we'll be ready for the moment of truth. Okay, so I've got a water bowl. It doesn't need to be really big, at least at this age, though he may grow out of this water bowl. Here's some lace rock. Got this cork log. Here's a piece of mopani wood. This is ironwood. Heavy as heck. Doesn't look like it, but it is. Okay. Here's a couple more good pieces of wood I have here in the reptile room. Okay. Good. This is definitely a step where you're just playing around, just seeing where different things look good, where they don't, how they might all work together. That's neat. It's important to know, with all of these things that aren't glued into the background, I can change them around anytime I want. This may wind up being my best basking spot in the entire enclosure, but I'm going to need to make sure the temperature is going to get hot enough to use this as my main basking spot. Otherwise, I might have to build something up higher. So I'm going to have to get my temperature gun and see just how hot it gets right there. The light's only been over that stick for a couple of minutes, and already we're getting nearly 100 degrees. So I definitely think it's going to be hot enough. We'll just see if it gets to be too hot. This is a cool rock I found many years ago. And this is actually something that a visitor here at the room carved and brought to me. We'll see how those work out in here as well. Let's see. All right, let's check those temperatures one more time. Okay, so my hottest spot I've got right now is 102 degrees, which is not going to be hot enough for this species, but I also don't have doors on here yet. This light has only been there for just a few minutes. I think we're going to be okay to go ahead and put the doors on here. We're going to get the stickers off, and then we'll go ahead and introduce this animal. I'll keep monitoring that hot spot to make sure it's going to get hot enough. Worst comes to worst, I can put a much bigger bulb in that lamp, but I think that's actually going to get pretty much right where we want it. All right, let's do it. All right, so these are the new doors, and I gotta say, this is one of the biggest upgrades. The plexiglass that they used on the previous models of this enclosure was the nicest plexi I've ever seen used in an enclosure, but it still scratched a little bit. It was really hard. It didn't scratch much, not like every other plexiglass door I'd ever had on any other enclosure, but some. They have since replaced it with actual glass, which I love that, and the way that they packaged it was brilliant. So that's our enclosure. Now let's find out what's going in it. So this box actually arrived yesterday. I was hoping to have it arrive today so we could unbox it live on camera, but because of the cold, they had to send it one day earlier so it would get here in time. This is from Chaotic Creatures, and they sent this overnight via FedEx to my local FedEx hub. I can tell you, sending animals through FedEx can be scary, but I've also received a ton of animals this way and I've never had any problems. They always come in great condition. Just make sure you go with a seller who knows what they're doing, and that's one of the great things about Morph Market, because it has reviews. You can clearly see if they know what they're doing or not. This box has a lot of cool stuff from Chaotic Creatures. It has a little note with it with an important warning. Thank you, we appreciate your support. Stay chaotic. Rule number 1, do not open bag in car. Good advice. But they sent this animal to me. They had a heat pack in it. It was still plenty warm when it got here. In fact, it's still a little bit warm today, and that's a day and a half after it got here. So that kept it plenty warm. Of course, in the summer and warmer months, heat is actually more dangerous than cold, and so you don't want a heat pack most of the time, but this time of year, it was important to send it with one. And I will tell you, it arrived in amazing condition. And actually, it came in a snake bag, which may or may not be a clue, but it ate for the first time before it even left the bag. And I am head over heels for this creature, but I've never handled it. I just took the bag, put it in a temporary holding enclosure until we could finish this. And so this will be the first time that I ever handle this animal, and the first moments that it's going to have inside of this enclosure. So let's go get it. So he ate for tongs from me actually twice yesterday, once while he was still in the bag, which, you know, before I handle an animal, I like to get it feeding, though sometimes I'll handle it a little bit to make sure it's healthy and then get it into the enclosure, let it settle in. I've never had an animal eat while it was still in the shipping container. And once it came out of the bag, well, actually, it ate one in the bag, and then I used another one to lure it out of the bag. At no point did it seem afraid of me yesterday. And so I have some more feeders with me. This is at least eats insects, among other things. So that crosses a few things off the list. But this is a very smart animal. And so I don't want to do anything that's going to mess up the relationship that we have. It's honestly, from what I could see yesterday, its personality seems unreal. But again, I've never touched this animal. So this is going to be a first. And hopefully we can get it to actually be the one that crawls onto my hand. I don't want to have to be the one that chases it around or subdues it in any way. We just need to get it from its holding enclosure into here, and then we can just leave him alone for a while. Well, this is your first glimpse at him. Do you know what he is? Because it's probably the most exciting of all possible options. Oh, I love this guy so much. Look at that tail. How cool is that? Can you believe this? I'm going to see if I can lure him. See if I can get his attention. You want one of those? You want one of those? Come on. Come on. Good job, buddy. He's such a legend. He's just a little too smart for his own good is all. It can take months of hard work with monitors to get them to the point of what we just saw. He's already there. Can you believe this, guys? Look at this lizard. This is one of the most incredible lizards on the planet. I've been in love with this whole group of monitors since I was in South Africa. And due to the dietary needs of this subspecies, I picked it over the slightly smaller one that's actually in South Africa. But I have always loved, oh my gosh, look at him. All right, let's see if he's interested in another one. You want another one of those, buddy? You're gonna need to work a little harder. You're gonna have to come all the way onto my hand though this time. Yeah, you're gonna have to, you're too smart. You know what that is. You know a trap when you see one, don't you? Come on. Oh yeah, that's a good boy. That's a good boy. Oh, here, try that on for size. Oh my gosh, guys. He's little now. You finished it already? Sorry, buddy. He's been in this enclosure for 5 seconds. He's already eating. What an absolute legend. While we watch him explore, I just want to tell you a little bit about how this whole experience has been with Morph Market, with this new Dubia.com reptile habitats enclosure. Unbelievable. So good. Morph Market was a delight to work with. He gave me an incredible selection of animals, an incredible selection of breeders, and I could not be more excited about this monitor. You can tell it's not just healthy, it's not just beautiful, but because it is captive bred by somebody who really puts effort into their animals, it has a personality that is just second to none. And when you're talking about a monitor like this one, the black-throated monitor, that could be 7 feet long and 60 pounds when fully grown, you definitely want it to be of the best personality possible. I think we've nailed that. Oh man, isn't it fun watching him explore? This enclosure is spectacular. Like I said before, these reptile habitats enclosures are my favorite enclosures of this type. I honestly, other than replacing the doors with glass, really couldn't think of a way that they needed to be improved upon, and yet somehow they have managed to make this enclosure significantly better than it was before. It is now head and shoulders better than anything else in my opinion, and yet at the same time, still a very affordable enclosure, especially considering it's 120 gallons. 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. Absolutely tremendous. Ships small. It's a reasonably sized box to, if you have to bring it in all by yourself, and then assembly, easier than ever. So easy. It was easy before with the mallet. Now it's even easier with just a screwdriver and an Allen key. Incredible. I couldn't be happier with the way that backdrop turned out. That was a whole new experiment for us, and it turned out great. And here's the thing, if you want to have an experience basically just like this, you can easily hop over to Dubia.com. You can order this enclosure or a host of others, and then right over to Morph Market, where you will be able to pick virtually any pet reptile you can imagine. Though I don't think you could beat this one. If you want to find out more about black-throated monitors, be sure to watch our video all about them. So this is pretty exciting, but I do have one more extremely exciting announcement before I let you go. So that is a black-throated monitor inside of a 4-foot by 2-foot by 2-foot Dubia.com enclosure. I am so thankful to Morph Market and Dubia.com for sponsoring this video. I am over the moon about this monitor, but I did tell you that I have one more surprise. Some of you might be disappointed about the exact animal that I chose, though I kind of doubt it because this is like the ultimate animal I could have chosen. However, this is actually the smaller of 2 enclosures that Dubia have sent to us. And so we're going to play this game again very soon. If you have any suggestions for what we might put into an enclosure, oh, I don't know, twice this size, please throw them down in the comments. As always, like and subscribe. I hope to see you real soon. Oh, there he goes, right up the wall after I said, I don't know if he can climb very well. Straight up the wall.